I recently decided to study French again, but I very quickly remembered how insanely difficult this language is to learn. I mean, seriously, it has like 5 E's or something like that. So instead of studying the French language, I decided to study the French defense. Because why would I talk to people from different cultures if I can't just sit at my computer and play chess alone?
Hello darkness, my old friend.
When most people think about the French defense, they think about a medium-hard, rather boring opening that isn't actually getting played in the top levels that much. This game, I found, is the complete opposite of that. It's pure insane tactics, and it was played between World Champion Mikhail Tal and later World Champion Bobby Fischer. Let's get right into it. So Fischer plays with white and Mikhail Tal with black. Fischer plays e4 and Tal e6. And while you guys already know that Tal plays the French defense, this was a huge surprise for Fischer, because normally at the top level this does not get played that often. But Mikhail Tal did a bit of research and he found out that Bobby Fischer is way better in positions that he is familiar with. Meanwhile, Tal didn't really care about the position, he just sacrificed everything and tried to mate the opponent. So he figured that Fischer did not play against the French a lot and decided to play the French defense. Fischer played d4, we have d5 and knight to c3. After the bishop comes out to b4, we are in the Winawer variation. I don't really recommend this variation for beginners, because usually what happens is that white will end up with the isolated e5 pawn. And while this is not really a problem if you know how to play the position, it's really difficult to play these sorts of positions with isolated pawns. So for beginners, I recommend to play e5, the advanced variation, and after c5, c3. If you want to see a complete video on this, please let me know in the comments. But Fischer didn't play this, he played the Winawer variation, which is thought to be the most challenging one for black. He plays e5, we have c5, and Fischer plays a3, kicking the bishop. The normal way to play here is to take the knight with check. But Tal knew that Fischer probably had a lot of preparation in this line, so he looked, together with a few other grandmasters, for new ideas in this bishop a5 line, which were thought to be way inferior to taking the knight. Now, Fischer played b4. You can't just move away the bishop, because then I simply win a pawn, so Tal took in the center. Now you could take the bishop and I take the knight, but Fischer thought about another line and he played queen to g4, attacking the weak pawn. If you take my knight now, I take the pawn and you can't save your rook. Tal of course saw this and he played knight to e7. If you take my pawn now, I play rook to g8, it's protected by the knight. And if you take another pawn, I move away my bishop that was hanging, and now the pawn in the center and your knights are hanging and black is simply better. So Fischer didn't take, but first took the bishop and Tal took the knight. Now you can take the pawn because the bishop can't move away with tempo anymore. Still, Tal plays rook to g8 and white takes the pawn. White is a pawn up now, but black has a lot of compensation because of the active pieces. Meanwhile, white's pieces are still all on the back rank. Black keeps developing with tempo on the isolated pawn and white does the same. Defends the pawn and black attacks it again. Now white plays bishop to b5, defending the pawn with a pin. Black can't take it anymore. Black unpins the knight and now white castles. I really couldn't figure out why white didn't just protect this pawn. Now, of course, this pawn is also attacked, but I would much rather lose a side pawn than a center pawn. I really don't know why Fischer didn't go for this. Maybe he was a little bit concerned with this queen here. The computer also thinks you should just defend your pawn. But Fischer castles, and this is still a good move, don't get me wrong. Tal did not take the pawn. And it's very funny that they both wrote in their books they thought that taking the pawn would be a mistake by black. They thought that after takes, takes, and takes, king takes and queen to d3, white was actually better. I don't know how they figured out that white would be better here, because as an amateur, I look at this position and I see, well, black has a pretty far advanced c-pawn, black has the center, the rooks are connected, one on the open file directly to the king, this queen is very active and it's very easy to activate the knight. Meanwhile, white has an active queen, doubled pawns, one isolated pawn, and all the rest of the pieces are on the back rank. Yes, the king isn't very safe from black, and that's what Tal wrote in his book. He wrote that after something like rook to c8, over defending the important c3 pawn, and rook to b1, trying to get the king to safety, this would actually be very dangerous for black. And after white keeps developing, I kind of agree with him. Because if the rook now is coming to b1 joining the attack, this does not look very pleasant. Nevertheless, the computer still thinks it's very equal, and if black plays perfect, black is actually better off the queen to d3. But Tal didn't go for this, and instead also castled. We have the bishop coming out to g5, and here Tal finally takes the pawn. And this is a very interesting move. The reason why he took it now is because now the king is much safer than before. But if we look at the move a little bit closer, we actually realize it blew the position wide open. First of all, this knight is now hanging. Before it was protected, and now it's just straight up hanging. You really can't take the knight though. If you take it, I play knight takes f3. You can take the knight because it's pinned, and after the king moves away, rook to h8 simply wins the game. There's way too much pressure on the h2 pawn, and you have to play g3 to defend all of the mating tactics and sacrifice your queen. So now we know why he didn't take this. The second thing that happened is that it's a discovered attack on this bishop. You could take the bishop with check, after king takes there's some continuation and we end up in an equal position. Fischer took the knight though. And here they both said that taking with the queen would be a blunder. Because they thought that after bishop takes knight, rook to h8, playing on this tactic again, counter-attacking the queen with rook to e1, takes, bishop takes rook, king takes bishop, bishop takes bishop, king takes rook, rook to e3, attacking the weak pawn, d4 and rook to e4, white is much better because you can't save the pawn. They both wrote in their books that they think white is definitely winning here, and they are both wrong, and I will show you why. But just to throw this in, it's an insane idea and I would have never ever found this without the help of the engine. So black is actually losing a pawn here, but it's not the d4 pawn. Black has to find the move, and this is the only move that keeps an advantage for black, a slight advantage, e5. White takes the e5 pawn, so black is actually down a pawn, but now you play king to d6 with a tempo on the rook. The best move according to the computer is rook to e8, don't ask me why. And after f4, white has to sacrifice this pawn back by playing king to f1. If you don't do this, if you play h3 for example, I play rook to e7. You can't take the rook, because then I play d3 and you will never stop this. No matter what you do, if you take it, I promote, you are too slow. If you try to get in with the king, I still take it and you can't come any closer because all of this is protected and I make a queen anyways. So here you can't take the rook, but no matter what you do, I will still make a queen. If the rook goes here, we shuffle a bit, but after this I still push d3. And while it might take a while, in the end I will always make a queen. One continuation could look like this: after takes I push, you try to prevent it, I go rook to c7 and you put the rook in front of your pawn, and now this is completely shut down. You can never move your rook or I will promote. The computer is giving an evaluation of -5 for black, and eventually black will win this game. The thing is, they basically had to see this position at that point to justify taking with the queen, because otherwise they are both right and black is simply losing. So instead of taking with the queen, he took the bishop. Fischer played knight takes pawn with a tempo on the rook. Bishop takes rook, knight takes rook, and rook takes bishop. Right now, black is up a piece. If you just take here, I take a knight, we both have a queen and a rook, and black just has an extra knight. So white has to find this fork, forking the queen and the rook. Black now plays rook to g2. You can't really take the bishop because I play rook to h2, forking the queen and this skewer tactic winning the rook. Now the computer actually says that white is fine here, because there's some insane continuation where white can defend both of these tactics. But I won't show you because it's just way too complicated. Now, Fischer and Tal thought that this tactic would work. This is why Fischer didn't take the bishop, but played king to h1. After black moves away the queen with a tempo on the knight, white takes the bishop. We have queen takes knight and king takes rook. And now black played queen to g4 and they both agreed to a draw. And I know that a lot of you will be very disappointed right now, because usually when we have a firework of tactics, you want somebody to win. Now, first of all, why did they agree to a draw? Tal is just down the exchange and he has no compensation at all for it. And white saw that after king to h1, black just has this perpetual check here and you can't do anything against it. So they agreed to a draw. I think this is the first draw I ever showed on this channel, but I really think this game still deserved to be shown. I mean, keep in mind, the complete game only took 21 moves. All of this analysis, only 21 moves. So I really think it deserved to be shown on this channel. As always, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and a comment. It really helps with the algorithm and motivates me tremendously to keep making these videos for you. And I hopefully see you again in the next week with another video on chess or whatever.